started. Good afternoon, everyone. I will call the Minnesota Senate Transportation Committee meeting of Monday, February 19th, 2024 to order. The time is about 3:03, and we are in room 1100 of the Minnesota Senate building. Good afternoon, members. We have two items on today's agenda. The first is to hear from our green eye shade wearing Senate Fiscal Analyst. Oh, she didn't hear that. Said you have your green eye shade done. Krista Boyd is going to give us a quick update, kind of their fiscal picture in light of recent fiscal forecasts, although I know we do have the February forecast coming up that'll change slightly, but also in light of legislation that we passed last year. So we're going to hear a little bit about where we are on in terms of MnDOT funding, the Transportation Advancement Account, et cetera. And then we will move on to hear Senator Oumou Verbeten is here to present Senate File 3094, Creating Plain Language Driver's Manual and Written Examination. With that, Ms. Boyd, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to share my screen, but I'm kind of rusty at this, so give me a minute. Okay, oh, I can't do that. Share screen. Okay, does that work? Okay, great. There we go. Okay, this is the first of several handouts that are in your packet or have been distributed. And again, to reiterate what Chair Dibble said, I'm going to give a pretty high level, just a refresher on what was in a pretty substantial finance transportation package last year. Just to refresh our memory, we have a whole new account to talk about and some changes to existing revenues that we have. So I'll delve right into that. The first is a chart that we've seen in this committee before. It's just a flow chart on how the main revenues flow for the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. And this has been updated for the next full fiscal year 2025, since that's when a lot of the phased-in revenues will really begin to be realized. And this is per the last forecast. So this is total revenue. As we can see on the top, the green in the boxes represents the revenue sources. The red is the main fund, the HUTDF, and the blue are the uses of the fund. So across the top, we have our major user fees, motor fuels tax, up to, for the next forecast, about $913 million for the next fiscal year. The change here would be that the bill last year, Chapter 68, changed it to be indexed to inflation, not to exceed 3% in any given year, with a 2-year look back to inflation. And I'll talk a tiny bit more about some details of the changes later. And that is on the base tax rate. And then, and that's effective immediately. However, there was no increase this year, so the first increase will be realized in the next fiscal year, which is on this screen. The next big user fee is the vehicle registration tax. This has been a trend recently. In the Highway User Tax Fund, the user tax of the gas tax was always sort of the workhorse of the HUTDF. The vehicle registration tax is outpacing that. Now you'll see the next year's estimated revenue in the forecast is a little over $1 billion. And there were changes to that in last year's bill as well. The registration tax calculation is a multi-part formula. The base tax rate is $10 plus a tax rate applied to the manufacturer suggested retail price, and that price is depreciated according to a schedule in law over 10 years. So there were a couple changes to that formula. The $10 remained the same in Chapter 68. The tax rate increased to 1.575% from 1.285%, and then the depreciation schedule was modified, slowed a bit over the 10 years. One other change was that the set value for older vehicles over 11 years was decreased by $5 from $35 to $30 is what they pay. And then, excuse me, I need a drink of water. The next user fee, of course, is the motor vehicle sales tax. This is split 60% to the highway user tax fund, and then the remaining 40 goes to transit services in the Metro and Greater Minnesota. I should also state that the ones with the asterisk, the first three sources, gas tax, vehicle registration tax, and sales tax, are all the constitutionally dedicated sources. The others are statutorily dedicated and are can be changed. Can be changed in terms of where their revenues are distributed to. The motor vehicle sales tax, the tax rate was raised in Chapter 68 from 6.5% to 6.875%. And the allocation to the Metro and Greater Minnesota transit accounts was adjusted slightly, increasing the allocation to Greater Minnesota and slightly decreasing the allocation to Metro Transit. The 40% total for transit remained the same, so the HUTDF portion of the sales tax was the same. And then the other taxes are ones that were enacted in 2021. And the auto parts sales tax, there was a change to that in last year's bill. Previously, before last year, this was a general fund sales tax where 100% of it went to the general fund. However, there was a set amount of approximately $145 million set aside each year and put in the HUTDF. In the bill last year, that apportionment was changed to a percentage. So now the HUTDF portion will grow and fall as the sales tax revenues fall. It's now 43.5%. And the remainder that would go to the general fund is now going to be phased in gradually up until about fiscal year 2033 to a new account to fund mostly local systems of roads, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. So the general fund apportionment of the auto parts sales tax revenues will be phased out by fiscal year 2033 to 0% of that fund. The rental car taxes and leasing sales taxes that go into HUTDF were unchanged in last year, so this should be old hat for everyone here. And I won't go over the rest of the slide because nothing has changed. On the bottom, those are constitutionally mandated percentages to various funds, and there were no changes, obviously. So then going to the next sheet, this is our new account that was created in Chapter 68. It's the Transportation Advancement Account. And this is a hard account to get a snapshot of because it is changing over the next 10 years as the auto parts sales tax is phased in. And for instance, you can see in the first footnote, in fiscal year 25, the account only receives 4.5% of the auto parts sales tax revenue. That will grow to 56.5% by fiscal year 2033 and thereafter. That's a pretty big jump. I think current estimates of that percentage is about I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but about 230 million, I think. So that's a pretty big difference over the course of those years. So the 15 million might be misleading if we look at 1 year. The Transportation Advancement Account has two sources of revenue: the auto parts sales tax, which I discussed at length, and the retail delivery fee, which was also created in last year's bill. 100% of the retail delivery fee is deposited in this account. So you'll see for 2025, that estimate, which is when the fee goes into effect, is the next fiscal year. The estimate is 59 million for that year. So the total estimated revenue for this new account is 74 million, but that will continue to grow as the auto parts sales tax phase-in continues. So for the next fiscal year and thereafter, this is the percentage of the distribution of the TAA. You can see the percentages along the lines. Metro counties receives the largest share at 36%. Excuse me. And I just want to point out the second footnote on the bottom that Metro counties will also be getting a percentage of the new regional transportation sales tax, the Metro sales tax of 0.75%, which are not indicated on these slides. It's mostly a transit tax and some other transportation purposes. But Metro counties also receive 17% of that, and it's not shown on this slide. So the next is small cities, gets a 27% distribution of the account, and those are cities with a population of less than 5,000. Larger cities, which are also known as municipal state aid cities with populations of greater, equal to or larger than 5,000, are dedicated 15% of this account. Town roads receive 11% of the dedicated revenues. Town roads, of course, also gets a statutory apportionment from the HUTDF. That's not shown on this slide. 10% is going to the county state aid highway fund for county roads. And again, they also get an HUTDF apportionment not shown on this slide. So this is not total new revenue to town roads and CASA. And then right on the bottom, I just kind of set it off because it's not really a transportation fund, but it does get 1% of the account. Revenues is the food delivery support account, and that is under the Department of Human Services. That's 1%. Next year will be a little less than $1 million. And that is that, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. So members, it might be useful maybe at the next meeting, we'll hand out kind of the 10-year projection for the TAA so folks understand where, for example, small cities, townships, et cetera, will end up when there's the full phase-in of the auto parts sales tax and the retail delivery fee. The road maintenance fee has been fully phased in. It's a pretty good amount of money, I think, for small cities. It's in excess of $60-some million per year. Actually more than they've even articulated that they need. So it's pretty good, and I'm pretty, Senator Jasinski and I share our happiness about that. And of course, we're going to, as we've discussed a number of times, we're going to look at allowing both the small cities and the townships to be able to bond against that source of revenue, which will be a big help, as we saw the small cities. Local roads, residential roads are pretty much dust now. so
Mr. Chair?
They need they need to speed up some of the improvements they need to make to their roadways. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the question I have is this getting allocated and distributed in 25 or collected in 25?
Ms. Boyd.
Yeah, the distributions are, are you talking about timing of the distributions?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
I'm talking about when will the small cities actually in this distribution formula, when will they actually have that cash on hand to really plan a project in the small cities? When will they really have that money cash in hand? Is that going to happen in fiscal year 25 or fiscal year 26? Is it collected in 25 and distributed in 26, or is it getting collected now and distributed in 25?
Ms. Boyd.
Senator Howell, that's a very good question. I'm afraid unless Mr. Greenfield has an answer, I'm going to have to get back to you on it. I know there was some questions on some of the locals on whether they would be tied to when LGA is distributed, and I don't have an answer for you right offhand, so let me look into that for you and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Senator Jasinski.
Just to follow up on that, and that's the concern I'm hearing. I think Senator Howe and I have been in contact with the groups, and there's a concern that there's a lapse. And I think a lot of years we put some funding into to get them this funding. So if we could look at it this year to get some funding to maybe in the bonding bill, maybe in the transportation bill, to get small cities and townships a dollar amount this year to kind of hold them over until this really kicks in. I think that's the concern we're hearing in those areas. So if we could just consider that. I know you're on the bonding committee as well, and again, a lot of these projects go hand in hand with wastewater because a lot of the cities can't improve their wastewater piping because they don't have money to fix the roads. And to do the wastewater, you have to dig up the roads. So I think that would be one way to help to get some money to small cities and be able to have them plan to use that money. So if we could figure that out, and Ms. Boyd will follow up with you on that. But if we can't get that done, if there is a year lapse, hopefully somehow, either in bonding or transportation, we get some funding, one-time money to cover that hole we're not seeing start. So I know you've been talking with me with that as well. So, and again, I want to say once again, we do appreciate the ongoing funding for small cities and townships. We have not had, I know townships have got a portion. Small cities have never had that. As you well know, I've made my opinion noted that we don't really like the delivery fee. We'd like to see it done through auto parts sales tax. And just because of that, Do we have an update on how that retail delivery fee is going? I know there were some concerns on how that would happen and some complexities for small businesses to implement that. Have we gotten any feedback from the agency on how that's going? Because I know it's going to take until 2025 to either collect it or spend it, whichever you look at, but I've heard some complexities of doing that. So does anybody from maybe MnDOT or someone have, or admin or MMB on how that's going?
So I want to respond to a couple of things. One is I see Mr. O'Rourke in the back there. I completely agree. Getting some dollars sooner rather than later, especially given the fact that the road maintenance fee hasn't even kicked in yet. And there's a slow ramp up on the auto parts sales tax. So that means it's just little peanuts that are coming at this point for the small cities and the town roads. And so doing something sooner rather than later on a one-time basis, maybe, stealing from some of our one-time general fund from last year, or, magically getting a good target this year, we'll see how that goes, is high on my list of priorities. So we agree on that. Purposefully, we delayed the effective date of the road maintenance fee because we knew it would, we wouldn't get it perfect or right, and there would be a number of things to work through. And I know that the Department of Revenue and those who are the stakeholders have been meeting and talking, and they're due in, and there's some button-up stuff that we need to do on the language, and then probably some other stuff that they've figured out that we should tend to yet this session to make sure we get it right. We didn't invite anyone to speak on it. I don't see necessarily anyone here to speak on that. But I'm meeting with folks in my office. I've already had a few conversations with the Department of Revenue, meeting with the Department of Revenue along with the retailers this week sometime, I think. So I'll have more for you. So I'll definitely bring you and your research staff in on that conversation, and then we'll have some conversation here in the full committee in a public forum like this. Senator Howe. All right, great, thanks. All right, anything further? Ms. Boyd.
Sorry, I prepared a third handout, so I just want to refer to it. I'm not going to put it up on the screen, but it was passed out. It's just a bullet point list of the modifications to our existing revenue sources, and then the new revenues, the retail delivery fee and the metro sales and use tax. And then there's a small spreadsheet showing the estimates of those increases at the end of session last year. There's been a forecast in the meantime. These are the end of session. We're about to have a new forecast. I'm sure we'll see some new estimates of these. The only reason I want to point this out is because the regional transportation sales and use tax and the details on that were not on the slides I shared earlier. And so if you want to refresh your memory about this, about the split, 83% to the Metropolitan Council from the revenues, 17%, as I mentioned, the metro counties, and then the revenues are actually on this sheet as well for the transpo sales tax, since it wasn't on the earlier sheet. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Anything further, members? All right. All right, thank you. Senator Oumou Verbeten. Yes. Welcome to the committee, Senator. Is this your first visit to transportation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to be here.
So happy to have you here. Excited for your bill. I think this is a bill that came up last year that we didn't get to, so I'm excited that this is our first bill of the session. So with that, Senator Oumou Verbeten, would you like to start with your delete everything amendment so we get the bill in the shape that you desire?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not on the committee, but I think this qualifies as an author's amendment.
Yes, it is.
And just reflects the work that we were able to do in the interim, including placing some of these requirements on the driver and vehicle services test committee that already exists.
Great, and then we have an amendment to the amendment. Mr. Greenfield, how should we handle that?
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, the amendment that Senator Dibble is referring to is the A4 amendment that's been distributed to everybody, and it's referring to language that is on page 2, line 17, that just folds in the reference in subdivision 1 of section 17113, language pertaining to road signs that in the drafting was not included. So the language at the end of 2.17 would read clauses 2 and 3. And so we could just make an oral amendment to the A to delete everything to reflect that change as it's been distributed, so everyone has both the oral amendment as well as the written copy as well.
So, Mr. Greenfield, should we move the oral amendment and vote on it, or just incorporate it by reference?
Mr. Chair, you could do either, but I think the oral amendment would make the most expedient sense in terms of the path of this bill.
So Senator Morrison offers the A4 amendment to the A2 amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes. And so we have the A2 amendment as amended. We have the A3 amendment that I believe Senator Jasinski is bringing, which seems non-controversial. Senator Oumou Verbeten, have you had a chance to review the A3? Is it favorable in your view?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Jasinski, you want to move the A3?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move the A3 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A3 to the A2 amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right, and should we move the A2 at this point?
Yes.
All right, so all in favor of author's amendment A2 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. Senator Oumou Verbeten, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 3094 will require the Department of Vehicle Services to rewrite the driver's license knowledge examination using plain language standards. Plain language meets readers' needs. It is clear, simplified language that follows a specific set of grammatical standards. And these plain language standards are outlined in two important pieces. The first is the federal Plain Writing Act of 2010, which requires agencies to use plain language in any documents necessary for obtaining benefits, services, or filing taxes. And also in Governor Dayton's 2014 Executive Order 1407, which requires the use of plain language for communications coming from the executive branch. So these are all found in the new DE between lines 1.22 and 220. So this bill will also instruct the Division of Driver and Vehicle Services Test Maintenance Committee to rewrite the test by February 15th, 2025. They can enter into an agreement with a third party to participate in any revisions to meet those plain language standards. And then lastly, the commissioner is just required to submit a report to the transportation committees by February 1st, 2026 on implementation. So that's what the bill does. But here's why it's important. Writing in plain language is the best practice, and it benefits everyone. I'm joined today by Amna Curran, who is an English language teacher at Andover High School and brought this issue to my attention, and we'll hear from her shortly. But what Amna's been doing is spending several years reaching out to the Department of Public Safety and Driver Vehicle Services and working directly with English language learners to try to pass this written portion of the test. And so what she found was that English language learners were having a really hard time with this test, even folks who, had driven a car for decades in their home countries, and many of whom had done this as a profession, but they were just really struggling with the written component of this test. So we know that these folks know how to drive and can understand traffic laws, but we're having that difficulty. And that is really just because of the way the test itself is written. So it can be wordy, use complex and compound sentence structures, and just confusing terms. And so to give you an example of that, the test would ask questions like, quote, backing up is not allowed on freeways or expressways except for, and then, list multiple choice options. If we were to rewrite that using plain language standards, the question would only need to read backing up on freeways is allowed only for, right? And then list the question. So it's removing double negatives like not allowed except for, and it also omits just unnecessary words, in that case, expressways in the sentence. So again, it's a best practice. It benefits everyone. Amna can speak directly to this, but she's also collected a lot of data that shows writing in plain language also benefits native English speakers. And that's one of the reasons why I was really excited to carry this bill, because it takes me back to taking the test when I was 16 and being really confused by some of these sentences, having to like reread them multiple times. I failed my test the first time, took the second day and passed, but I'm a native English speaker, and I could see how I struggled with this because it wasn't written in plain language. So really making the test clearer, people will be better able to understand the questions and then better able to demonstrate their knowledge of Minnesota traffic and driving laws. And our test administrators will also be more confident that they are sending people to get behind the wheel who understand the rules of the road. It will also reduce the need for repeated test attempts and subsequent visits to driver's test facilities. And I know that's something this committee cares a lot about. That could lead to some reduced wait times at facilities across the state. And we have seen this implemented elsewhere. So the state of Maryland implemented plain language standards in their test. They actually had a lot of disability activists leading the charge in Maryland. It's also very much an accessibility issue. And the ACT and SAT implemented plain language standards in 2014. So it's been done. Just finally want to say that this bill is not changing any of the material in the knowledge examination or making it easier. It's really just about providing clarity. So best practice, and it benefits everyone.
Thank you, Senator Oumou Verbeten. I see two people sitting up here with you. Are they here to provide testimony? And
Yes,
so would
Mr.
you like
Chair.
to introduce them?
Yes, I'll start with Amna to my left.
Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Verbeten, and greetings, respected committee. My name is Amna Kiran, and I'm...
Can you pull the microphone a little closer to your mouth? Thanks.
Sure, I was trying to push it further. Yes, my name is Amna Kiran, and I teach English as a second language at a high school.
And please proceed.
All right. So as I mentioned that I teach English, I'm an ESL teacher, and I teach English to those who speak English as a second language and has a different primary language at home. I have been affiliated with the District of Anoka-Hennepin for a little over 6 years. And not only do I provide the direct instructions to my students, but also help them in their mainstream classes as well. So while helping some of my students in the driver's ed classes, I had this discovery that it was like an epiphany for me. So some of my students were studying really hard. They were very excited for having enrolled in the classes because they wanted to drive. They wanted to get the permit, start driving, and helping their families. For that, they were very excited. They were studying really hard. They were passing all of their classes, their tests and assessment at school level. They were coming in the before and after the school, and yet when it came to taking the final DBS test, they were failing it. Upon inquiry, I found out that they were finding they did not understand the questions on the test. And they related similar experiences about their family members as well, that they were having great deal of, they had a great deal of experience of driving in their countries, but they were failing the test miserably, and a number of times in Minnesota. And some of them are probably still driving on the roads because now without a license and with no insurance now, because they have to go to the work, they have to support their families, and frankly speaking, I do not blame them because they cannot starve their kids to death because of a poorly written test. I also spoke about this issue with some of the native speakers of the language regarding their experiences of the test, and they went through the similar ordeal about the test because of the complex language and confusing wording on the test. I ended up sending some letter and doing some correspondence to the DVS, wondering the rationale behind the way they write the question as to why do they use such complex English to write the questions when it's a driving test, and especially when the same questions can be written in simple and plain language. And some of the one examples that Senator Claire gave you interview, but I did not get any satisfactory response from them. And that resulted into a study that I conducted both from the native speakers and non-native speakers of the language. And two of the main questions that I had in the studies were, was the question on the permit test difficult? And the second main question was if the wording on the test was confusing. And you should have the packet in which you will see this pie chart from where we have the native speakers of the language. These many native speakers of the language are finding the test difficult, and this is non-native speakers of the language, and this is the native speakers of the language. And we can see that there is not much difference. So, and similarly, another question on the study was, if the wording on the test was confusing, and this is our non-native speakers, and this is our native speakers. So the point that I was trying to make is that if the test is this much difficult and complex and hard to understand for the native speakers of the language, how much more difficult would it be for those who speak English as a second language? So I sent that to the DVS as well, and again, it was not, I did not hear a great response. So here, I would also like to give you some more examples of how the same question, because in their response, one of the things that they said was that it's an important test, and we do not want to water down the rigor of the test. So we are not asking them to bring the rigor of the test down. Keep the test questions exactly the same. Just write them in a way where people can at least understand them. Once they can get the answer right or wrong, it's on to them. But the main thing, any test taker has the right to understand the question of what they're being asked, and that's all we're asking for. So one of the examples, the example that Senator gave, it can be written in several ways in simple English. So backing up is not allowed on freeways or expressways except for. So as a non-native speaker, if I do not know what except for means, I will never get that answer right, even though I know the answer. The same question can be rewritten as only blank vehicles are allowed to back up on a freeway. It's exactly same question, but written in plain English. Another one, on urban and town roads, the legal speed limit under ideal driving conditions is blank unless traffic signs indicate otherwise. Again, packed with language, packed with the unnecessary language. So it could be rewritten as, when the speed limit is not posted on city or town roads, the legal speed limit on the the legal speed limit for the drivers is blank. Now it's clear-cut and asks you exactly what you need to answer for. Another one with the obscure and difficult vocabulary, where it could be the one word can have several different meanings. Anyone who flees a police officer using a motor vehicle may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than. Again, for not more than, and if I do not know imprisonment, sentenced to, flee can have several meanings. So the same question can be rewritten as, if anyone runs away from the police officer using a motor vehicle, comma, he or she can go to jail for blank or less time. Now, it's way more understandable. Again, question is the same. So it's crystal clear from the examples that the DVS employs difficult English language, obscure vocabulary, and complicated sentence structures to write their questions. And this practice make the test seem more like an advanced English language test and not a knowledge test for driving. That leads us to two significant outcomes. First of all, the current assessment of the DVS is not a valid assessment of the driving test, because it seems to assess the language ability of people, how well they speak and they decode the language, and not how well they can drive or what is their knowledge of the motor vehicle or the roads is. So it should be a straightforward assessment of driving a test and not an advanced literacy exam. The other finding for that is that this test turns out to be very inequitable and clearly discriminates against those who don't speak English as a first language, and also against the individual who have low reading levels or reading disabilities, or they're not highly educated. They have not gone to college and knows about all of that nominalization and how to decode them, or who have not had the opportunity to even attend the school. So I just want to extend a question to you, and of course, I'm not expecting an answer for that, but do the lack of academic English, lower reading levels, or lack of education make you a bad driver? Once again, I'm not asking by any means that we make the test easy. They should keep the rigor of the test the same, only write the questions in a way where test takers can at least understand what they're reading. I would like to conclude my testimony by saying that writing the test following the guidelines of Plain Language Act will not only make it a valid assessment, which any assessment should be valid. It will not only make it a valid assessment, but will also ensure an equitable opportunity for every Minnesotan. May they speak the language may they speak English as a first language or a second language. It will also result into more legal drivers on the roads, because after passage of driver's license for all, this is the next logical step that we can take to make this test more accessible to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Before you proceed to your next witness, Senator Oumou Verbeten, I see a couple of special people in the back of the room, if you might want to introduce them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did invite my parents to come join us today.
All right.
And again, whole family experience of knowing how important this issue is, and just very grateful to Omnikiran for taking the lead. There's just so many families like mine, first generation kids, children of immigrants, were struggling to take the test. My mom is a great driver and struggled with this. I had that issue as well. So we're all very excited to be here today supporting this bill.
Give us a wave. All right. Welcome to the committee. Great to see you. I'm reminded, if I can extemporate for 1 second, I won't say his name, but the valedictorian of my high school class, who is now a medical doctor, failed his written test 3 times because
Thank you
it was
for
very
sharing that.
complicated, and he the language was confusing, and of course he overthought it, and 3 times he failed. So with that, why don't you introduce your next witness, Senator Oumou Verbeten. Welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Taha Hashmi, and I just wanted to say that I would like to agree on this topic that we should change up the language on the driver's test. And my reason for saying this is I moved to the U.S. when I was around 3, so English was essentially my first language. Yeah, on the day of my permit test, I was stumped on some of the questions, which led me to think that if it's difficult for me, then it should be difficult for those who don't speak it as a first language like I did. And I'm just because driving should not be involved with language, they are 2 completely different topics, so I think we should keep the same rigor as my mom was saying on the test, just make it simple English and not complicated questions. That's all I got to say.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hashmi.
Professor.
Senator Verbeten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one more testifier.
Great. Absolutely. Welcome to the committee. Please
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself for the record and then proceed.
Yeah, I'm Ann Mabbitt, and I'm only going to speak for a couple minutes, but I'm going to give you my message twice in order to illustrate what we're asking for. I'm Ann Mabbitt, and I'm an applied linguist and professor emeritus from Hamline University's English as a Second Language Teacher Education Program. I have a long history, first of teaching English to immigrants, and subsequently teaching the teachers of immigrants. As reflective of the intention of the Federal Plain Writing Act 2010, teacher education strives to prepare instructors to teach and assess in a manner that is accessible to non-native speakers of English. We teach them to recognize the linguistic complexities of English that hinder understanding, teaching the teachers to pay attention to the phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics that they use, so that students can access what they need to learn in school. We are asking that the same attention be given to the language on the Minnesota driver's test so that it becomes a valid assessment of drivers' knowledge of the rules of the road. To accomplish this, we suggest that any committee rewriting the driver's test include an applied linguist who easily recognizes the complexity of language and knows how to simplify it without changing the rigor of the test. So I'm now going to proceed to say the same thing, but a little bit differently. Hello, my name is Ann Mabbitt, and I have worked with teachers much of my life. I taught them how to change their English so that immigrant students can understand it. I also show teachers how they can write tests so that they can really find out what their students have learned. The federal government in Washington, D.C. has had a Plain Writing Act since 2010. It asks everyone in the federal government to write plainly so that everyone can understand. We think that Minnesota should do the same thing. We think that the language of the driver's test can change so that everyone understands the questions. A teacher with experience with languages can help write the test. We're not asking for an easier test. We're asking for a test that everyone can understand.
Thank you. Senator Oumou Verbeten, anything further? All right, we'll take it back to the committee. Questions, members? Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Oumou Verbeten. I agree with the bill in concept. I totally understand that. The one thing that, I've had some I-35 accidents recently, and so when you're talking about English language learners, is there a basic knowledge, for an example, slow down ahead of when there's an accident or something that happens like that? So, and maybe Jordan can attest to this, or I just wondering if there's a basic knowledge of some of the English language for traffic signs that may help with avoiding an accident ahead again. So slow down, traffic accident ahead or something like that. That's my concern, just to make sure there's a basic knowledge. But I agree with the testing. My daughter, she'll probably kill me for telling you this, but she, and I never would have thought this, but she actually passed the test on the first time. Or I'm sorry, she failed the test, the written test 3 times, but passed the driver's test. And my son, who was a little older, he was the opposite. He passed the test the first time, but failed the driver's test 3 times, which I thought was going to be totally the opposite. So I understand the language side of it. But again, my concern is just if we do have a lot of English language learners, which we're getting more and more. Last year we had the undocumented driver's license, thing like that. But I think we also have to have a basic knowledge of the language for signs. A big thing in signage, as I said, crash ahead, slow down, those things. So I don't know if anybody can attest to that or talk about that, but that would be my one concern, just to make sure we have a basic knowledge of some of those words that can prevent accidents ahead.
So Senator Oumou Verbeten, I'll toss it to you, but also let you know that we do have Director Zhang here, who can also respond if you would like the agency to respond to that question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Jasinski for the question. Again, I would just say that that signage that you might be referring to, anything that is testing our knowledge of Minnesota traffic laws, right? Not trying to change any of that information, just the way those questions are being asked. I couldn't speak to any changes to signage itself. That might be a better question for the agency. But really, folks should be able to study the manual and then understand the question that is being asked of them. I think Amna said that really well. Just everyone has a right to understand the question that is being asked of you. And I think what is happening is they probably do know what that sign says, but don't know that what the question itself is asking, right? So just writing it in plain language will help everyone understand, oh, they're asking me about this sign that, I read about in the manual, and they're asking me, whatever that question is that is in the manual, making it very easy to understand.
Senator Jasinski, did you want to put the question to the agency?
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, if I could. Again, and not so much the standard signs, but I know we have a lot of digital reader boards that are going up, which are great assets to have to alert drivers. But on those, sometimes I think I did one see say slow down, crash ahead. So those type of questions, just to the basic understanding, I guess would be the question I'd have for the
If I
department.
could ask one of you to give up your chair. Welcome to the committee. Mr. Holt-Aufderheide, please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jordan Holt-Aufderheide, and I am the Chief of Staff for the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. I can attempt to answer some of your questions, Senator Jasinski. The signs that are the digital message boards in the roadways are controlled by MnDOT, so I don't want to speak for them on how they determine what's up there. But in general, for road signs, if you're thinking of construction signs, they are a traditional shape and color that is somewhat unique that should alert the driver. And some of those are managed not only at MnDOT, but also at the federal level, so they are consistent throughout the U.S. So I don't have an exact answer for you, but I think that hopefully answers some of your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We did just have an update to the manual on uniform traffic control devices at the federal level, the MUTCD, and we're probably going to have some conversation about that a little later this year, especially as it relates to speeding and speed enforcement and speed signage. So maybe we can, we'll become a little more enlightened. It's a great question, and I think we should have a response of some sort, because it's a good point you make.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, again, I agree with the bill. I just want to bring those points up because I've heard some discussion on that with a lot of new drivers from other nations. Having some general knowledge of some of those warning things would be important to alleviate some of those accidents. We had a couple of really bad accidents. A couple people got killed on I-35 because there was a backup, and they weren't able to realize the backup was there. And I think MnDOT's been working on some of that, and one of the things we're doing is now is some rumble strips for known areas that have backup congestion from these big construction projects. So I think that's a big benefit we're seeing now. But again, listening to the testifying, I wanted to bring that up as long as we knew. So thank you.
All right, so I have this order, Senator Lang, then Senator Howe, and then Senator Carlson. So Senator Lang.
I think I was up next to give that amendment that you guys already attached to it, but I would say that, yeah, I'm pretty supportive of the bill, and in fact, I think if any simple language could be brought, I spent 22 years in the military and 8 years in the legislature, and I can say there's a lot of non-English language that's going on here in both places, so I appreciate the effort. Yeah, there is, the way that some of those questions are worded, I think, are done by very smart people in a intentional way to get the best out of all of us. But obviously, I think that this committee can move forward and probably do it in a little better way. So I appreciate the effort. Yeah, I did have that amendment, but it must have been so great that we just got to put it on. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Your brilliance precedes you. Senator Howe.
Well, I too, Senator Oumou Verbeten, I agree with this. Not only do I agree with this, but I think it doesn't go far enough. I think we should establish this as the standard for all licensing in Minnesota, to include the EMT, the building officials test, the plumbing test, all of those testing should follow this suit, because it seems like I think we'll put a lot of test writers out of work, though, because there's people that just write these things and that's what they contract for. But we should make this just a knowledge test and not a grammar test where the comma goes and where the double negative is. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel a bill coming on. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I actually have a very specific question that was triggered by Senator Jasinski's question. That is that are there particular words that are used or words that we would like to use that might be problematic? And the one that has bugged me for years is the sign that should be used when we use left turn or left lane closed ahead, right lane closed ahead, merge. Would everybody understand zipper? Zipper merge. Because we have road rage that is prompted by people who will think that zipper merge is, they don't understand a zipper merge. So is that a term that everyone would know?
Senator Verbeten, you can take a stab at it. I think that's another MnDOT matter, perhaps. So I'm guessing Mr. Alterhide will take a pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Carlson. Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that question, but what I would just say is I would point you all to, again, the list in this bill of what plain language standards are, because some of it is just like turning verbs into nouns for nominalization, using present tense. So it's not so much about the specific words that we use, but how we put a sentence together. That's a really important piece of plain language. And there's experts who do this, right? Like that is their profession, to put things into plain language. And it's a whole field, established field. So I'm sure the department will be able to find folks to help them, implement this change. And just want to say, while I have the mic too, that So excited to hear your support, Senator Lang and Senator Howe, and it sounds like we've got work to do on extending these standards to lots of other things in state government, and we've got a great person here who's ready to help us in Omnikiran.
All right. Anything further? Senator Carlson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Senator, I really support this bill. It's great. When I read through the examples that needed to be changed, those that were not changed, I didn't really know how to answer them sometimes. And so it did make it clear to me. So I really appreciate your effort here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So members, I'll mention that there is a fiscal note in your packet. The cost is estimated to be as high as $212,000. It may not be that much, as it turns out in the end. The appropriation would be from the Special Revenue Fund, the Driver and Vehicle Services Fund. Remember, that's a combined fund now, as of last year. At the top, it says it's classified as non-public data. This had been a preliminary fiscal note and actually written to the previous version of the bill, but as I understand it, wouldn't change that much given the changes to the delete everything amendment that we adopted. But the requester of the fiscal note was the chief author who did authorize its release publicly. So we're not breaking any rules here by including this in public and making this document public. But because it does have an appropriation, it does need to go to finance. And so it'll have to make a stop there. All right, members, anything further or any more questions? All right, Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe my motion is that we vote and move it to finance.
Yeah, so your motion would be to recommend that Senate File 3094 as amended be recommended to pass and referred to finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. On Senator Morrison's motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right. So members, that concludes our business today. We are meeting on Wednesday. We have the MnDOT technical bill, so-called technical. It's actually substantive. And we'll probably have some amendments to make to that. We'll release those amendments well ahead of time, Senator Jasinski, so you know what we intend to bring into that bill. We have like 3 naming bills. One of them is a, yeah, and we're doing Senator Johnson's bill? Yeah, and then Senator Johnson has a weights bill. Anything else? And then on Thursday morning, we're meeting jointly with the House on reimagining I-94. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you mentioned this had fiscal. Do we have a supplemental budget target, or is that coming soon? Or when we pass a bill that costs dollars, I'm just concerned that we don't have a target yet and we're already spending money.
Right. So this is not general fund money. It's special revenue money. So it's coming out of driver and vehicle services, so it wouldn't be subject to any target constraints. And actually, I don't know that we're going to move it beyond finance. We'll probably pull it back into a larger omnibus finance bill should we get a target and have money to spend. So that's the plan, at least at present. So thank you for the question. All right. Anything further? With that, we are adjourned.